there's a name in the popcorn. Gig?
Yes, that's right.
Gig. Awesome. I'm Brian.
Hey, Brian. Hey, congratulations for last 3 days.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's exciting times.
It certainly is. I bet you a lot of people would like to reverse the last 3 days, but you did it.
Yep. No, it's really funny looking up the film. Just on Google, if you type in last 3 days, like half of them are, having to do with the election or the coronavirus, or like, so it's like, okay, last 2 days movie, and then it comes up, but
That's right. Hey, so let's start off with the easy question. Where did the original idea came from for last 3 days when you wrote it?
The original idea. So it started with, filmmakers say, write what you know. And, I had a pretty normal life, went to film school, worked at a film production company. And I'm like, well, I know film. So I was like, where do I start? At that point, I'd been married for a few years. Like, well, okay, I can write something about marriage and kind of drama-y, but I'm like, that's not really my style, not what I like to make and direct. And so basically, it's like, let's take that relationship and just put it under an intense amount of pressure. We're like, what is kind of like the most pressurized careers we could give these people to really amp up the tension? So then it went to, it's like, well, it could be an undercover cop. And I went and had a 4-hour discussion with a guy I knew who was an undercover police officer in the 90s. And just from that conversation, it was like, all right, now I have like a lot of really interesting personal stories. And then my wife and I love sci-fi and fantasy. And we're like, okay, how can we now take this kind of like small story that's been put through an intense amount of pressure and give it kind of a sci-fi twist to, do those types of movies you really want to be making, but do it in a grounded way with locations we knew we had access to and stuff. We're not on a spaceship with tons of visual effects. We're like, let's keep it small. And 3 weeks later, we had the first draft of the script. So it was those kind of three pieces that all came together very quickly.
I was fascinated by this film because it had certain time elements without being a time travel type of movie. So how did you want to approach that carefully for yourself?
Yeah, so obviously Memento was a huge inspiration. And because it had kind of like these different timeline aspects to it, I actually kind of wrote the script twice. Once moving forward and once moving backwards, and having, basically figuring out which characters knew what on which timelines, and then, meshing those two different timelines and what characters knew and didn't know together, so that they're in these scenes that are incredibly confusing, where one person has knowledge that the other one doesn't from the future, and the other has knowledge that the other one doesn't from the past, and watching them interact in these scenes. So it was a kind of a confusing script to write that took a lot of conversations and a lot of pre-writing before even getting to the script. But no, it was also just kind of a unique experience that I think translates to a pretty interesting movie for audiences to watch.
Honestly, how many times did you revisit Memento again after trying to write the script?
Well, so only once, because I didn't want it to be so heavily just, I didn't want it to be a ripoff of Memento. So it's like, let's get the idea of Memento, the feel, kind of capture some of the same feelings, but I wanted to stay far enough away from it that it's not, that it was influencing my subconscious, but not there in the forefront of my mind.
Absolutely. So when you filmed, when you started production, one of the things that, like most movie productions, that everyone films out of sequence, because this is a script that's technically not really in sequence. How did you want to basically handle this properly without confusing yourselves?
Yeah. So, we did 12 rewrites of the script before we got to filming. So I had a good handle on the script, and then I actually pre-shot a lot of the film with, I love Legos. And so I created Lego versions of the sets and kind of pre-shot it on a camera in my office. So I had like a really good handle on basically what was going on. And then it was just at the beginning of every day, walking through the schedule and sitting down with hair, with makeup, with wardrobe, being like, this is this day, this is where he's at here, this is the clothing, this is, and so yeah, filming an out of order movie out of order was extremely confusing, but the crew did just an amazing job. And just beginning of every day, kind of doing a briefing of where everyone's at. And then even with the actors, it's like, this is where you're at emotionally. This is what you know. This is what you don't know. And, the actor in the same scene from them knows the opposite information. And, it really was just lots and lots of conversations before the camera was rolling every day to make sure everyone knew where they were at emotionally, physically, with, the clothing and the hair and everything else. And, a lot of the crew, I think, the grip and lighting team, I think a lot of times they didn't even know what was going on. They're just like, we'll just trust that they know what they're doing and do what they say.
I checked out your filmography because you actually have worked with Legos in films before.
Yeah.
And so how is this at an advantage? Because it's one thing to storyboard a movie, but you said you use Legos, which is totally out of line from any other director or anybody producing a movie.
Yeah. No, it's, George Miller for Mad Max, it's like he storyboarded the entire film first, but it's like, in pre-production, we didn't have the money to just hire a storyboard artist to do a whole film. And I'm a terrible artist. So Lego just became kind of part of the necessity. But one of the really great things about it is that you're working with a camera in 3-dimensional space. It's, a miniature version of it, but it's like you actually get a really good understanding of angles and things like that before you ever get to set. And it saves so much time just to kind of explore that beforehand and, sit down with the cinematographer and look at the shots that we did in Lego and be like, all right, this is the shot we want here. This is the shot we want here. And yeah, it saves a lot of time. And also, with a storyboard artist, sometimes they don't 100% nail exactly what you're going for because you're trying to get from your brain to theirs, but with Lego you're just moving everything around yourself.
So you must be a Lego master in spirit for yourself.
Yeah, no, it's my brother actually, he does a lot of animation work and videos for Lego, and I've worked with him for years on it. So it's, as a kid, it was working with Lego was like my dream, and I've found a way to incorporate that into what I do.
So tell us about the Japanese Yakuza element with the film. What inspired you to bring that into a film like this?
Yeah, so a couple things. First, it's it's a cop crime syndicate movie, and a lot of it's been done before. And so it's like, okay, well, like, who's the bad guys? Who's the good guys? And we wanted to do something a little bit different. And I actually worked on a film in Japan back in 2011. Spent, a few months learning Japanese. I was one of the editors on the film, so edited a film in Japanese. We had a Japanese director that I worked with. And it was just a great experience. I loved the culture. I loved the language, the people, all this stuff. And it was like, I haven't seen that in like a kind of LA cop crime syndicate movie. And I was like talking to a bunch of people and they were saying, it's like, oh yeah, no, like that totally would work in this setting. But also one of the things I wanted to do with this was, the Yakuza, the Japanese characters, they're criminals, but they're also sympathetic characters. And like a lot of the actors, they love the role and took the role because they're like, wow, some of them like, I haven't played villains before. That's cool. But it's also it's not just a villain. It's someone who has their own character arc. It's someone who has their own, it's like they have their own emotions, their own love interests, all these different things. And like a big part of the film, you've got Jack and his wife. He's a cop. She's a nurse. But you've got one of the subplots, you have two of the Japanese gangsters who it's like, it's subtle, but you like kind of pick up on it. And it's like, they have a relationship, and you get to see a little bit of this kind of like mirrored world where you have the crime syndicate and you have the police officer, but the police officer's relationship is like falling apart and not good. Yeah. And the Japanese characters, it's like they've found a way to align their lives so that they can, work together and be in this relationship. And so it's fun to kind of do little things like that and kind of mirror what's going on and on either side of the story.
You know what I found kind of funny was that you had some of the Yakuza wearing those demon masks, and I was thinking in my head, I don't think that's practical. Trying to shoot shoot someone wearing those masks on themselves. So
no, and just on a practical level, part of the reason for the masks was so we could reuse some of the same actors, because it's like there's shootouts, they die, and it's like, we haven't seen your face. Stand back up, switch jackets, do it again. But yeah, it's kind of like with, movies like Ben Affleck's The Town or Baby Driver, it's like you've got these guys in masks and we're like, okay, let's take some inspiration from that and kind of, give this a new look. Because, having those masks, that shot where they're like walking through the fog and stuff like that, that was like a shot I envisioned way early on. And we're like, we want to have this in the film. And like I feel like that's kind of become one of the iconic shots, and on YouTube and stuff, everyone's pulling shots of those guys with machine guns. Definitely not practical, but a lot of things in film aren't.
Oh yeah, I know. I've talked to the director of John Wick. He uses the same 10 guys. After John Wick kills like 200, it's the same 10 guys, because his trick is to make them grow long hair and then slowly shave and cut their hair until they're bald at the shots and so on. But
that's awesome.
It is very awesome. So one more thing. So let's talk about your actors. Talk about Robert and Deborah. Why they are perfect for the lovers roles in this film.
Yeah. So I met Deb quite a while ago, and I think when you're writing a script, it's helpful to like kind of envision different actors and roles. And so for her, it was, as I was writing, I was like, oh wow, she would be really great for this. And like just knowing her mannerisms and things like that, I could actually write that into the character. And it really helped bring the character to life and really helped her connect with that. And with Robert, like I didn't know him at all, hadn't worked with him at all. He just, when we sent out the casting call, he sent in an audition reel. And when you're doing casting, it's like you're looking at, Deborah was the casting director also, so she's filtering hundreds and hundreds of video audition submissions and sending them to me. And so, I probably looked at like 60. And there was just something about Robert with, because he'd done a lot of stuff with, like on General Hospital, and he had kind of the charismatic, attractive, like, side that is good for that love interest and gets girls excited to watch the movie. And he had that side, but then one of the scenes they sent in, it was a very intense scene where he he's yelling and like gets really frustrated and everything, and had that kind of like perfect balance of the the gentle, kind, loving person and the really badass, tough undercover cop who is slamming people's heads on the dash of the car. And getting to see that progression of the character in the film, I think it was really exciting to see Robert. I think like you were talking about with John Wick, it's like we would do scenes where he's the adult cop in the beginning of the day, and he'd have a 5 o'clock shadow, and in the second half of the day we're doing the scenes where he's younger and meeting his wife and stuff, and he's shaving, and we're like, we have a picture in the park where he's shaving, sitting in the grass with a mirror, getting ready for this scene where he's younger. And like, even with his hair, we got to do different things. But yeah, no, watching him just kind of like really connect with the character and connect with this person who was very idealistic, but now is becoming jaded and is becoming this kind of like darker character. And then also like, I sent his headshot to our cinematographer, and we were just even looking at like the lighting with kind of that the heavy shadows and everything, and just thinking about his hard features and how the lighting and the shadows would interact with it, we're like, this guy's the guy. Like, as soon as I saw the audition tape, and I was like, no one else. I don't even want to look at anyone else. But, being responsible, I did. But when he came in for the callback, within 5 minutes, I knew this guy, no one else can play Jack.
Excellent. And one last thing as we're wrapping up here, as we're talking via Zoom right now, how are you staying creative and sane during times like this?
Yeah, so we're, my wife and I, we made this movie together. We have a production company. We've been super fortunate that we've been doing a lot of commercial work, actually, because like places that sell things online, they still are selling stuff and still need content. And we've been able to like pare down and have a very small crew that can, turn out these commercials for clients who are actually doing well while everyone's locked down. And then writing. A big part of it is, thinking about what's the next movie, what can we do hopefully next year, kind of to follow up last 3 days. And yeah, just we're constantly talking ideas. My wife and I had a baby right at the beginning of lockdown. So it's like every morning and night we take the baby for a walk and we're talking about like what's next, what do we want to do next. We're working on a script together now that we're really excited about. But yeah, no, it's a lot. It's given us a lot of time and space to be able to think and dream and ask the questions like, what do we want to do next?
Excellent. Well, hey, congratulations, Brian, for last
Thank you.
days. We'll look forward to any more of your fantasy sci-fi projects, or perhaps a Lego movie down the road.
Yeah, I would love that.
Excellent. Well, hey, thank you very much. Bye now.
Yeah, thank you so much.